So entrepreneurship was not directly taught to you as this is a business and can be a way of life. It was just something that you observed people doing as a means of trying to make ends meet.
Hello everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Ataraku Effect. As always, I'm your host, Claudel Kamgon, and today I'm very, very excited to receive and to interview Navalayo Osembo. She is the co-founder and CEO of Enda Sportswear, a company based out of Nairobi in Kenya, and completely disrupting the sportswear market coming out of Africa. And of course, the goal is not just Africa, but the whole world. Navalayo, thank you very much and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to contribute and share.
Awesome. One way for, I think, everyone to get to know who you are, what is Enda Sportswear, and your vision for Africa, we're going to break it down in three. The first segment, I would like to focus about yourself, your life before Enda. So, where were you born, Nava?
I was born in Nairobi a long time ago. I'm going to say the year. It's a long time ago. And I pretty much grew up in Kenya and studied here. And this is where most of my life has been.
I see. So, while you grew up in Nairobi, did you have the chance to travel a lot as a kid, either in Kenya or internationally?
No, not really. Actually, my first international travel was when I was like over 21. Like that was way back. And international, I mean East Africa community. So I pretty much grew up in Kenya. And I think I first traveled abroad when I went for a short study course at LSE in 2012. So before that, I hadn't really been outside the continent. I had been within Tanzania and Ethiopia pretty much, but I had not been to other places.
I see. Which I think is already pretty good, right? I think most Africans, as we are aware, we don't have the chance. We don't value travel that much. So even if it's Tanzania, I'm sure it's pretty good already.
I think we value travel. It's just that it's expensive, By the time you think of getting an airplane ticket, it's so much money that sometimes you don't think about it. But I think there's the expense and also just the fact that there's so much that goes on in our local communities, and when most people think of travel, they think of travel abroad, not like local tourism. But I think a lot of it has to do with some culture and some just not having the resources.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, not only that, but depending on where you want to go, even as an African, for some countries you do need a visa sometimes.
Yeah, there is sometimes you think about the process and you're like, it's fine, let me just stay here and enjoy the sun.
Indeed. Okay, yeah. So you've done that a couple of travels before your first international one. I want to talk about the way you grew up. Have you always been living with your parents?
I think I lived with my parents until I got my first job. That's when I moved out, and that was still after a while. So I pretty much grew up in a very, I would say, family or traditional environment. I went to boarding school for high school, but pretty much kept on coming back home. So I did live with my parents for a really long time.
I see. Oh, that's interesting. Can you tell us a bit more about boarding school? Because in Cameroon, especially in the English part, boarding school are known to be very strict. So is it the same thing in Kenya?
Yeah, it's the same thing. You're supposedly supposed to grow up in boarding school, but I'm like, no, you're not. I think we should be the generation that changes that culture. And I don't think boarding school is bad per se. I think it's just how they are run that's really bad. Like it's sometimes short of a military complex. So it's run by extreme discipline, and sometimes maybe you're genuinely sick. Or sometimes, I think even as kids, you want to see your parents or to play. So I just find them extremely rigid. And they could be good, but there is definitely room for making them more student-centered as opposed to institutions.
Interesting. Okay. I see what you mean. That's kind of different from I think what it is in Cameroon. Do you think at the end they were more positive than negative? For instance, would you say that it taught you how to be disciplined?
I would say that, like, if I was strictly honest with myself, I did learn a lot of discipline. would I do that? Would I basically take my children through that experience? I don't know, to be honest. I'm leaning more towards no. But it did really teach us resilience. But I think there's better ways to teach resilience.
That's interesting.
How was the Cameroonian experience?
The Cameroonian experience, from what I've heard, it's like most of the people that I know who grew up in the English part in Cameroon, most of them really loved their boarding school experience. They have, I know they have a very strict calendar. They see their family, I think, only once or twice every 6 months, something like that. So I think it's something that as a child they don't like, but when they talk about it as adults, they think it was a really good experience.
Okay. I mean, some people have that opinion. I think I would have preferred to be home more.
That makes sense. Tell me about Nava, as you were growing up then boarding school and with your parents. What do you think are the couple of values that you acquired as a child that you grew up with and that you think are never going to leave you?
I think definitely discipline. Discipline from a perspective of you have to do things even when you don't feel like doing them. Mm-hmm. So my dad was in the military, so discipline came automatic as part of the JD for him. And I think some of the stuff he made us do, we really hated it. But it was just essentially discipline. Now it's time for study. Now it's time for going outside. Now it's time for it was very demarcated what we would do and when we would do it. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that really helped us to focus. And then there was also the discipline in academics, as all African parents are. You kind of have to really pull up your socks on academics. Mm-hmm. So we did not play, and my mother was a teacher as well, so she was like, yeah, you guys have to work hard. And I think that was just when I look back, I do remember part of my childhood. It's very vivid memories of reading on a Sunday afternoon. It was just the ritual of you're done with your chores, you've done with your everything, now it's time to study. So I remember study being a really strong element of my time. And I think that was also just because at first it was mandatory, and after some time it just became a habit. So I would say definitely discipline and hard work. Mm-hmm. Because I think just observing my parents, they didn't have much, but they really put in their best efforts to give us what they could. Mm-hmm. We didn't necessarily have the best of the best, but I would say that I knew that they were giving us their best. And that also motivates you to want to be better so that you can do something for them.
Interesting. Would you say either via your parents or at school, was being an entrepreneur something you ever talked about or were encouraged to be?
Not directly. I wouldn't say people would say I think everyone wanted me to become a doctor. Thank God I'm not. I don't know how successful I would have been at that. But I felt like entrepreneurship was kind of like this thing that was always next to you. It wasn't necessarily given a name. Now they make it fancy and they do all these kinds of stuff. Mm-hmm. But back then, because you have so few resources, the resources were really scarce. Mm-hmm. So everybody was doing something else to supplement their income. My parents, for instance, were farmers in addition to their regular jobs. So farming was something that was very direct, something that my family was involved in. My father also did a bit of trading in terms of auto dealing, selling cars and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And as far as much as I can remember, they have been always trying to supplement their income with something. So entrepreneurship was not directly taught to you as this is a business and this can be a way of life. It was just something that you observed people doing as a means of trying to make ends meet.
I see. Okay. Yeah, I think we have the same thing in Cameroon and probably in a lot of countries in Africa where everyone, or at least most people, those who can afford it, they have their daily job and then they have a side gig just to bring an additional stream of income. And for some people, as we will get into, it can become a full-time job, just quit the day job and then do the side gig on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about your studies after high school? So you're done with boarding school. At that point, what do you want to do and what do you study then?
I can't say I knew what I wanted to do, but my brother had studied accounting. He was basically a certified public accountant. So back in the day, we had to wait for 2 years before joining university, just because the universities were not enough to cater for all of us. So there was a system where you had to wait 2 years. And during that time, my brother was like, well, you should learn accounting because it's a good skill to have. And so I went to a school here in Nairobi, a college, and I did my accounting as I was waiting to be admitted to uni. And then I went into law school, which is what I wanted. So I can say I'm lucky in that perspective because it's literally a lottery. Like based on your grades, you get allocated to whatever whatever course the governing body thinks you should do, and that's it. So thankfully I got law. I wanted to do law. And I studied law, and then after that, I went to Kenya School of Law. You have to now go for the bar admission exams. And a couple of years later, I went to study international development at the London School of Economics. I was lucky to get a scholarship for that, which was also a really good experience in terms of just opening my eyes and really seeing the world for the first time.
Wow. Okay. I like how humble you are every time you say that you were lucky to do this, lucky to do that. But as you said, I'm sure that since it's based on your grade, you were a good student as well, right? So it's not just a matter of luck. You also worked hard to get where you had.
Yeah, that's true. But I also consider there were other equally strong candidates. So yeah, you could look at it both ways. But yes.
Interesting. Is it the same system today? So basically, when you finished high school, you didn't really know what you wanted to do, and the lottery system just put you in law. So you could have gone to law school or any other type of school for that matter. Then there's no match between what you want to do and where you go to school. Is this still the same system today?
I think they still do. Like, it's basically based on your grades. Like, they'll say there's 28 slots, for example, for medicine students. So the first top 28 get those slots. Then the next, they'll be like, and 28 is just a number. There's many more. And then there'll be X number of slots for lawyers. And then, like, it goes like that based on the grade system. I think it's still pretty much the same in terms of, like, our national curriculum has changed, but the method of allocation of what you study kind of remains the same. So that's why when I say, like, there is an element of luck in as much as you work hard, that I do know some people who ended up in careers they didn't like, but kind of you have to figure out how to pivot yourself and get into where you want to be.
I see. Wow. So at the moment you get into high school, your goal is just to have the best grade ever, and then at some level to pray that you get a slot into the school that you actually want.
Exactly.
Okay, so you finished the School of Law, you passed the bar, and then your first job then it's at Deloitte.
Okay, yeah, but that kind of skips because I was just talking about education. I actually started at Deloitte in my second year of uni. So I started as an intern, and I did internships all other subsequent holidays. So by the time I finished uni for my undergrad, I was already working for Deloitte. And after that, I still continued working for them as I attended the Kenya School of Law and worked for them a couple of years more before I decided to leave.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's something I didn't know. I didn't know that you had the opportunity to, while in school, work for them either as an internship or during the school itself. That's pretty cool. How tough it is to get either an internship or a full-time job in Kenya? Do they recruit extensively?
Yeah. It was actually pretty cool.
Yeah. Do they recruit extensively or just a few select, very smart? And how tough is the process to get a job at Deloitte?
I would say, like, based on my experience was different because I started as an intern. Like, literally, one of the staff members, I showed them my CV, that's my resume, and they were like, well, this looks good, I should share it with the partner. And then he shared it with his boss, and his boss called me for an interview, and that's how I got in. So I started doing the internships during a regular season, like when the schools were out. And then by the time I was doing second year, third year, fourth year, I had learned enough of the job for them to trust me with giving me a job, like immediately after I finished school. So again, I have to say I was lucky in that sense that I essentially had already established the trust or the system where they knew who I was and the work that I did. And I basically had an offer by the time I was I was graduating. So I do know like the process is also very rigorous. And I did actually do interviews and biometric tests and all that. It is actually a rigorous process, but ultimately it comes down to who you're working with and are they willing to work with you, or are the skills you're offering what they're looking for?
I see. Okay. So all in all, you did about 3 years at Deloitte, including internship, everything, about 3 years, right?
The internship actually, it was almost long. It was like 4.5 actually.
Oh,
it was a long time. Because by the time I was in 4th year, I was pretty much working full time and going for evening classes.
Got it. Okay. So about 4 years, I'm guessing you learned a lot. I saw that you traveled in Tanzania and Ethiopia as part of your work. What prompted the move from Deloitte? At that point of your life, did you know already what you wanted to do, or were there a specific body of work that you were interested in? What prompted the move from Deloitte to your next endeavor?
I think it was just the fact that I had been there for long, and I had this, I wanted to see what's out there. And like Deloitte is a great place. It's still one of the best places. It's still actually, the best place I ever worked. And I had gotten to a point where I think I had done, I basically felt like I had learned everything I could learn. And I wanted to know, usually you go in from a consultant perspective, telling people what to do. And I wanted to see from an industry perspective, how does it feel to do what you're being told to do? Like, how is it to run a business and literally be in the throes of doing something, as opposed to someone who comes in once in a while and tells you what are the things you need to fix?
I see. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like a lot of consultants, either in Africa or elsewhere, there's that moment where you just want to stop to give recommendation and actually be the one executing.
You summarized it pretty well. That is the reason.
That makes sense. So what happens then professionally after Deloitte? I know we're going to go all the way to your work with the UN, but I wanted to talk briefly about the different positions that you had between Deloitte and the UN.
I did very briefly. I was a finance process auditor at a startup in Nairobi. And I was there for a few months before I moved to the African Guarantee Fund, which I moved because by the time I was leaving Deloitte, I had sent applications to a few places, and the startup got in touch first. I thought this would be interesting to see a startup. And then when I was in the startup, I got called by African Guarantee Fund, who also seemed interesting because we were looking at a Pan-African perspective, which was really amazing. And they were also looking at financial guarantees, I was like, this is something that looks very exciting. It's new and I want to learn it. And so I moved from the startup to the African Guarantee Fund. I stayed there for a year before I decided to go do my master's. And after my is when I went to the United Nations.
I see. Okay. And I saw that you joined the startup back in 2012. So I feel like nowadays, as you know, startups are very sexy. Working for a startup is mostly encouraged nowadays because you learn a lot, you have a lot of responsibilities. But back then, was it, first of all, easy? And second, common for people to want to work for a startup? Because coming from a big company like Deloitte with operations all over the world and going to work for a startup, I understand the idea of wanting to do, but was it a choice to work for a smaller growing company, or was it like what happened there?
Yeah, it was a choice. I think I was at a point in my life where I was curious about my career exploits, and I really wanted to see what it means to be in a startup that was fast growing. And yes, you're right. Coming from a place where there's intense structure to a place where you're literally building the structure as you go was very different. And I think it's interesting when you talk about startups and how people make them look like the best thing. And the thing with startups, I feel like the people who basically make it look sexy are not the people who are doing the startups, because startup life is hard, So for most entrepreneurs who are doing the work, they'll just be like, are you wasting my time, or are you adding value? But then there are other people who are talking about the space that make it look really appealing for whatever reasons. But I would say startups is literally building from scratch. Like, it's not for the faint-hearted, but that said, it's something that is very different.
I see. I see, I see. Okay. Well, it's interesting because it didn't, even if it was difficult, as you said, coming from Deloitte, it didn't prohibit you, or it wasn't a bad experience in the point that even if it was hard, I feel like you learned a lot from that and it actually pushed you to become an entrepreneur later. So definitely a
Yeah,
balanced
yeah,
learning.
absolutely. I think the experience being in a very structured environment was that when you're in a place without structure, you're able to really quickly see where the gaps are. Like, and most of the things about structure is that they're normal, ordinary things, which if you don't look after, then they kind of come back to bite you. And Deloitte kind of gave me that background of being able to see that you're able to understand the processes and how they work, and then now kind of seeing a startup and seeing how that can be fixed. But then from a startup perspective, I also learned that it's not that they don't want to fix, it's just there's like other stuff, there's more priorities, there's lack of resources, there's not enough capacity. So you want to put the structures, but then you have to work in the realm of the challenges that exist in that environment.
I see. That makes sense. Okay. Nava, I think we can close the work part then with a brief blurb about your job with the UN. So you said that while working for the African Guarantee Fund, it was a bit more Pan-African. So I'm guessing that kind of prompt or help with your move at the UN.
After I finished my master's degree is when I got the job in New York and I moved there.
Yeah. Oh, the UN job was out of New York.
Yes.
Awesome. And you stayed in New York the whole about 2.5 years before starting Enda?
Yeah, I stayed about actually almost 3 years. 3 plus. It was going to 4 years by the time I was coming back.
Nice. Okay. Were you working, so you were based out of New York. Were you working on projects in Africa or the whole world? What type of focus did you have there?
Oh, it was global. It was now a massive, massive, massive scale in terms of just trying to figure out allocation of resources, allocation of risks. That was a very different experience.
Got it. Okay. Thank you, Nava, for sharing education and professional life with us so far, all the way until your last opportunities with the United Nations in New York. Ataraku to you listeners for sticking with us so far. I will encourage you to listen to the second part of this interview where we will talk about Enda Sportswear, where the idea coming from and the difficulties that Navas and her co-founder had to raise money, what is Enda all about, and what is coming next for not just Nava but Enda as well. So again, thank you for listening. Please remember to subscribe or share if you like what you're listening, and if you think a friend, a classmate, a family members, anyone you know around you would like to learn more about Africa and our leaders. Talk to you very soon.